She walked in at 3:17 a.m. barefoot, mascara streaked, and holding one high heel like it was evidence in a crime scene. I didn't speak. She looked around like she wasn't sure whose house this was, like the scent of cinnamon from the kitchen or the folded laundry on the armrest didn't belong to her life anymore. "Hey," she muttered. Just that one word. Soft. Like she was testing if I was awake. Or alive. The only sound was the slow whirl of the ceiling fan. And the glass in my hand, the one I'd been holding for hours, finally slipping from my fingers and cracking in two on the hardwood floor. She flinched, but still didn't explain. There were 2 lipstick marks on her neck. I counted them because I needed something to focus on. I'd seen that shade before, not hers. I knew that because I was the one who bought all her lipstick. 5 hours earlier, I had sent a message. It wasn't long. Just one line. "If you walk into that bar with him, I won't be here when you get back." No threats. No yelling. Just a line drawn in water, waiting to be tested. She left me on read, and didn't reply. That silence was louder than 1,000 arguments. I sat through sunset to midnight in that chair, my phone turned over, waiting for her to say she changed her mind, that she came home early, that I was being ridiculous. I even practiced what I'd say when she did, how I'd apologize for overreacting, for being too emotional, too needy, too me. But instead, she came back smelling like whiskey, clove cologne, and lies that had already dried. I stood up. She finally noticed the open suitcase by the door. The suitcase she gave me 2 Christmases ago, the "you should travel more" gift. Ironic. She said my name like it was a question. Nolan. But I didn't answer. I walked past her, opened the door, and paused just long enough to whisper the one word that had been chewing a hole in my chest all night. "Why?" She didn't answer. And that silence, that exact second, is when something inside me broke in a way that wouldn't heal the same again. The elevator door had already closed by the time I turned back around, but I swear I could still smell her perfume in the hallway, vanilla with some hint of citrus, the one she wore when she wanted to be noticed. The kind she never wore for me anymore. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from that hollow feeling you get when someone confirms your worst fear with absolute silence. It wasn't even betrayal that hurt the most, it was how unsurprised I was by it. I walked past the hotel reception without checking out, just left the key on the counter and nodded at the tired-looking night clerk who didn't even ask if something was wrong. Maybe it was written all over my face. Or maybe, in a place like that, no one ever asks anymore. I had checked into the hotel around 10 p.m., right after she sent me that photo. The one of the cocktail. The caption said, "Just one drink. Don't overthink things, smiley face." But it wasn't the drink that made my stomach turn. It was the reflection in the glass window behind her, blurry but unmistakable. Him. The same guy from all the company event photos. Tall, smug, always with his hand too close to her waist. This time, he was sitting next to her with his arm around the back of her chair. Relaxed. Like he belonged there. Like he knew I'd seen and couldn't do anything about it. When I'd gotten the photo, I didn't scream or call or throw my phone. I just quietly zipped the suitcase and left the house. It had taken me exactly 11 minutes. I hadn't even locked the door. And now, 3 hours later, I was standing on the side of a gas station near the freeway, staring at my own reflection in the dark glass of the vending machine. I looked like I hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. My eyes were swollen, my hair limp. I looked like the kind of man who gets left behind and writes long posts on the internet that no one reads. The receipt from earlier was still in my pocket, folded 4 times into a tight square. Not the bar receipt. A different one. From a flower shop. I had bought her white tulips that morning. Her favorite. I was going to surprise her after work. It was our anniversary, not of our marriage. She never remembered that one anyway, but the day we met. I remembered. I always remembered. But she didn't. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. That thought hurt more than the image of her sitting next to him. I pulled out my phone. There were messages. 9, actually. And 1 voicemail. I didn't open them. Not yet. Instead, I clicked open the hidden album in my gallery. A folder labeled with the most unassuming name, Bills. Inside were screenshots. Screenshots I had never wanted to take but couldn't stop myself from collecting. Photos of her messages to him that she thought I couldn't see. AirDrop previews from her laptop when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she'd smile at her screen when I sat across from her during dinner. I hadn't shown anyone. Not even my best friend, Caleb, who warned me 2 years ago that she was too close to her coworkers. "She's a firecracker, man," he'd said. "But those things burn out fast, or worse, burn everything around them. I had brushed him off then. Said he didn't understand us. Turns out, he understood her better than I did. I sat on the cold curb, my suitcase beside me, and finally played the voicemail. Her voice was frantic. And beneath the panic, there was something else. Something that sounded a lot like guilt, but not the kind that says, "I'm sorry," more like the kind that says, "I got caught." "Emery," she said, "I didn't expect you to actually leave. Please just call me. We need to talk. You're blowing this way out of proportion." Proportion. She'd reduced my entire heartbreak to a matter of scale. Like I had overreacted to someone stepping on my shoe, not someone stepping on our vows. I didn't reply. I didn't even breathe for a while. But I did finally do something. Not impulsive. Not cruel. Just necessary. I opened a new email account, created a burner identity, and attached 6 of the screenshots from that hidden folder. Then I sent them to her company's HR department. Subject line: inappropriate conduct between employees, documentation enclosed. Because if I was going to disappear from her life, I wanted to leave behind a trail even she couldn't ignore. I thought I'd feel something after hitting send. Relief. Power. Closure. Maybe. But all I felt was cold. It was nearly sunrise, and the world was turning that washed-out gray that makes everything look like it's been drained of color. The gas station clerk was stacking crates of bottled water outside, giving me sideways glances like I'd been loitering too long. And maybe I had. I hadn't moved in an hour. My suitcase sat next to me like a quiet witness, and I still hadn't figured out where I was supposed to go next. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't go back there. Not to the same kitchen where she'd reheated his favorite leftovers. Not to the same couch where she curled up and texted him, laughing quietly while I sat beside her thinking she was scrolling through Pinterest. I booked a cheap motel with my personal credit card, one she didn't have access to. It wasn't far. Just a boxy, rundown building off the highway with flickering neon signage that buzzed all night. Room 106. The door creaked like it was groaning in sympathy with me when I opened it. There were 2 lamps, both yellowed with age, a bed that smelled faintly of mildew, and a tiny wall-mounted TV that didn't work unless you hit the side of it. But it had a lock. And a deadbolt. And nobody knew I was there. I dropped my phone face down on the nightstand. It vibrated again, her 6th message since the voicemail. Then silence. I didn't even read the words. I didn't want her explanations. I already knew the story. I had watched it unfold for months like a slow-motion car crash I wasn't allowed to stop. The part that really gutted me? I think she wanted me to find out. Not because she was brave enough to end it honestly. No, because it would save her from having to be the one to say she was done. She could be the victim then. Emery walked out. He just couldn't handle it. I didn't cheat. We were drifting anyway. She was building that narrative before I even left, planning it like little landmines in casual conversations. "You've been so distant lately, babe. Why don't you want to come out anymore? I need someone who matches my energy." I matched it once. Back when we met. Back before the job promotions, the rooftop brunches, the networking parties. Back when she still called me during lunch just to hear my voice. Back when she asked me to stay in bed 10 more minutes instead of telling me I was being clingy. I sat on the motel bed, clutching that same folded receipt from the bar. I unfolded it again, even though I'd memorized every word. The time. The name of the bar. The note scribbled at the bottom in blue pen. I hadn't seen it before. "Thanks for tonight. See you next week, B." My stomach twisted. That was his handwriting. I'd seen it on the Christmas card he wrote when he and Lorna hosted the company potluck. The one she asked me to take the photo for, where he had his arm wrapped a little too confidently around her waist, and I was the one holding the camera, smiling like a fool. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time bad decision. It was a schedule. I opened my laptop, pulled up her calendar. She never shared it with me intentionally, but one night months ago, I synced it to my account when she left her phone charging on my side of the bed. She never noticed. I scrolled through the week. Thursday. Client dinner. 7 p.m. Dress nice. Next Monday. Industry mix at Blackbird. RSVP with B. And 2 weeks from now, quick getaway weekend. Don't forget overnight bag, winky face. I sat there, jaw clenched, eyes burning, and read through every single fake meeting, every lie she dressed up as work, every moment she chose him over honesty. Over me. My hands were trembling again, but this time, not from heartbreak. I reopened my email. The HR message had been sent, but now I forwarded the same screenshots and calendar captures to one more address. Brock's girlfriend. Her name was Danielle. I'd seen her tagged in his Instagram photos, the ones he probably thought no one ever looked at closely. I found her email through her business website. She sold handmade jewelry. Subject line: thought you deserved to know. And I hit send. Because if they wanted this all out in the open, then I'd give them the spotlight they'd been dancing under behind my back. The knock came at 10:43 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just cracked open the lukewarm motel coffee, and the clock on the microwave was blinking after the power reset sometime overnight. The sound wasn't rushed, wasn't urgent, just steady, like whoever was on the other side knew I was in there and wouldn't leave until I answered. For a second, I thought it might be her. Maybe Lorna had tracked me down. Maybe she'd come with apologies, explanations, a duffel bag of guilt. But when I looked through the peephole, my chest tightened. It wasn't her. It was Brock. He was standing there in a gray hoodie, holding his phone in one hand, his jaw set like he was ready for a confrontation, or pretending he was. I hesitated. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't there. But his eyes looked straight at the peephole, and something about that stare made my hand go numb on the doorknob. I opened it halfway. "Emery," he said, with a slow nod like he was trying to appear calm, even diplomatic. I said nothing. He cleared his throat. "You sent that email to my girlfriend." Still nothing from me. I just kept the door cracked, body blocking most of the entrance, heart pounding. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Look, man, I get it. You're upset. But what you did, that was way out of line." Out of line. That's when something inside me snapped. I stepped out, letting the door creak open behind me. "I warned her," I said. "I told her not to go to that bar with you. She went anyway. And I did something." Brock scoffed, shifting his weight. "You think you blew up my life, Emery? You think you won something here?" "No," I replied. "I think I stopped pretending like I didn't see what was right in front of me." He ran a hand through his hair, that perfect, gelled mess of it. "Lorna's a grown woman. She made her choices. You weren't keeping her. You were smothering her." That's when I realized something terrifying. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even defensive. He was smug. He believed this was just another inconvenient mess he'd clean up with a few polished sentences. Like HR emails and betrayal and fractured marriages were just networking hiccups. I stepped back into the room. "We're done talking. You should go before I call the front desk." He didn't flinch. "You won't. You don't have the stomach for a real fight." That's why she looked elsewhere. He turned and walked away before I could respond. And maybe that was smart, because I was shaking too hard to say anything anyway. Not from rage. From the realization that this man had never feared me, never respected me, and worst of all, he was probably right. I hadn't fought for her. I had watched her slip through my fingers for over a year and just silently suffered. And now I was alone. A man in a motel room. No home. No wife. No victory. I shut the door and locked it. The silence felt heavier than before. But then, a new notification buzzed on my phone. Not from Lorna. Not from Brock. From Danielle, his girlfriend. "Thank you. You have no idea how much I needed the truth." Attached was a screenshot. A message she had sent to him. "You lied to me. You don't get to come back. Ever." And for the first time in months, I exhaled. Not because I was healed, but because the truth, no matter how ugly, was finally free. I sat back down and opened Lorna's messages for the first time. She had sent 13 in total. The last one read, "We need to talk. I didn't mean for things to go that far. You're still my husband, Emery. I miss you." I stared at that line for a long time. And then I started typing my response, not out of forgiveness, but out of something colder, sharper, because she didn't know what I had planned next. And it had nothing to do with winning her back. I didn't hit send. Not yet. I let my fingers hover over the screen, rereading her last message until the words blurred into nothing. "You're still my husband. I miss you." She knew what she was doing. She knew how to lace guilt with just enough affection to make a man like me stop thinking and start hoping. But this time, I didn't fall for it, because I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for years. Lorna didn't miss me. She missed having someone who never walked away, no matter how deep she twisted the knife. I powered off the phone completely and tossed it onto the nightstand. Then I grabbed my laptop. I wasn't sure where this next decision came from, maybe anger, maybe something colder, but it didn't feel reckless. It felt necessary. I logged into our cloud backup, the one we use to sync our home security system. Most people forget their smart home devices capture more than just break-ins. Ours had video clips stored, motion-triggered recordings from the hallway camera facing the front door. I hadn't looked at them in weeks, not since we'd started working on things, as she called it. But now I opened the archive, and there it was, 3 days before the bar incident. A Thursday afternoon. 1:24 p.m. Lorna wasn't supposed to be home that day. She told me she had a back-to-back client meeting downtown, but the camera showed otherwise. She came in through the front door wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, holding 2 takeout bags and a bottle of wine. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and in stepped Brock. He didn't even hesitate, just wrapped his arms around her like it was routine, like he belonged there. They kissed in the hallway, right under the camera. She knew that camera was there. She installed it. I watched the entire 5-minute clip without flinching, not because I was numb, but because something new had settled in my chest, not heartbreak, not rage, but a quiet sense of certainty. This wasn't a one-night mistake. This wasn't emotional confusion. This was comfort. This was a routine. And that meant one thing. Everything I thought was sacred in our marriage had been fake for a long, long time. I downloaded the footage. Then I opened her message again and finally replied. We'll talk, but only in person. Tomorrow morning. The house. Within seconds, she replied with a heart emoji and thank you. I'll be there. I swear, Emery. She had no idea what was waiting for her. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't want revenge. That's not what this was about. This was about truth. About forcing the mask to come off, not just for me, but for everyone she'd kept in the dark. Her family. Her friends. The coworkers she hadn't seduced. I wanted them to see who she really was when no one was watching. Not for them to punish her. Just to know. I called Caleb. My best friend. The one who warned me years ago. Are you free tomorrow morning? I asked. What's going on? He replied, voice cautious. Just be at the house. 9 a.m. I need someone else there. Someone who remembers who I was before she twisted me up. He didn't even ask questions. I'll be there, he said. I made one more call to a locksmith. I asked him to change every lock in the house immediately after I left. He told me he'd come at 10 a.m. sharp. Then I spent the rest of the night planning every word I'd say to her face. Not to convince her of anything, not to get answers, but to hand her the truth and walk away, for real this time, without needing her to validate a single emotion. This wasn't about getting even. This was about getting free. The air that morning was unnaturally still. Not cold, not warm, just a flat, quiet tension that hung over everything. I stood in the living room, freshly showered, wearing a shirt I hadn't put on in months. One she used to like, back when she used to care about things like that. My suitcase sat neatly by the door. I had already taken my essentials out of the house. Everything left behind was hers, the curated life she built with me as background noise. At exactly 8:59 a.m., I heard tires on the driveway. I didn't move to the window. I didn't need to. I knew it was her. I could feel the shift in the air, like when a cold front rolls in and you instinctively reach for your jacket. She let herself in without knocking. Of course she did. She still thought she belonged here. Emery, she called, like we were in the middle of some casual misunderstanding. Her voice was light, rehearsed, almost breezy. I stepped into the hallway just as she turned the corner. She was dressed like she always was when she wanted to win. Soft makeup, subtle jewelry, a blouse that said respectable, but still invited attention. She held her phone in one hand like a security blanket. There you are, she said, smiling too brightly. I wasn't sure you'd. We're not doing that, I interrupted, my voice quiet but flat. No games. No stage play. Her smile faltered. I could see it, the calculation behind her eyes, flickering like bad reception. She didn't know which version of me she was speaking to, the doormat or the ghost. She followed me into the living room. Caleb was already seated on the couch, arms folded, jaw tight. She blinked when she saw him. What is this? I wanted a witness, I said. Someone who actually remembers how this started. She gave a small, sharp laugh. Are you serious right now? No. I'm done being serious. Now I'm just being clear. I walked over to the coffee table and pulled out the envelope. Inside was a printed transcript of every message I had documented, the screenshots, and a still image from the video, the hallway kiss, dated and timestamped. I handed it to her. Her face drained as she flipped through the pages. At first, she didn't say a word, just read. I watched her pulse jump at her neck. When she got to the last page, she finally looked up. This is disgusting, Emery. Spying on me? Snooping? Do you even hear yourself? You did this in our home, I said. With the man you lied about for months. You didn't even try to hide it anymore. So no, I don't feel bad for collecting what you left out in the open. She looked to Caleb like he might somehow intervene. He didn't. You ruined my career, she snapped, her voice rising for the first time. Do you have any idea what you've done? HR's already suspended both of us while they investigate. Brock's girlfriend blocked him. I warned you, I cut in, not raising my voice. I warned you not to go to that bar with him. I told you, if you did, something in me would break. You walked out anyway. She swallowed hard. I didn't think you meant it. You never mean it. You always forgive. You always roll over and beg for me back. Not this time. She looked stunned, like that possibility had never occurred to her. I'm not here to argue, I continued. I wanted you to see what you destroyed. I wanted you to read it, hear it, and understand that I know exactly who you are. No more illusions. No more. Maybe it was just a phase. You made choices. And now you're going to live with them. You think this makes you strong? She whispered. You're still pathetic, Emery. You think sending emails and hiding in motel rooms makes you powerful? You're just a bitter little man who couldn't handle a woman with ambition. That hit differently than anything she'd said before. It wasn't just defensive. It was cruel. Meant to carve out whatever dignity I had left. But it didn't work. Not this time. I stood up straighter, picked up my suitcase, and walked to the front door. The locks are being changed in 15 minutes. Anything you leave here will be boxed and sent to your mother's. I'll email you the paperwork. Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Not a plea. Not an apology. Not even another insult. I turned back once more before stepping out. You weren't too much for me, Lorna. You were just too much for yourself. And you dragged us both down trying to fill something inside you that I was never meant to fix. Then I left. The screen door creaked behind me, and I didn't look back. The locksmith's van was already turning the corner. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. And yet, I had no idea what she was about to do next, or how far she'd go to flip the narrative. I thought the storm had passed. After the confrontation, after walking away and locking the past behind a newly installed deadbolt, I let myself believe the damage had reached its limit. That she would stew in her own ruin, maybe lash out in text messages or call my mother with dramatized tales of betrayal, but eventually move on. I underestimated her. Or rather, I underestimated how much control she still thought she had over the story and how dangerous a cornered manipulator can become when they feel irrelevant for the first time. 2 days after I left the house for good, Caleb called me early in the morning. I was staying in a rental cabin out near Stillwater, remote enough that the cell signal was spotty, but close enough that I could still find a grocery store if I needed to pretend life was normal. Caleb's voice was tight when I picked up, like he didn't know how to say what he needed to say. She posted it, man, he said. She's really doing it. I sat up, heart already pounding. Posted what? Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, of all places. She's telling everyone you emotionally abused her, that you blackmailed her, that you were paranoid and controlling, and he paused. She used the word unhinged. I didn't respond right away. I just let it settle into my chest like a stone sinking through cold water. I should have expected it. The way she looked at me during our final conversation, there had been a flash of something desperate behind the scorn. I thought it was fear. It was calculation. She tagged her company, Caleb added quietly. That's what hit hardest. She wasn't just lashing out. She was trying to ruin me. I hung up and logged onto the motel Wi-Fi to check her page. Her post was long, filled with vague language crafted to sound legal but still personal. She didn't name me outright, but everyone knew. The pictures of us from the past. The timeline. The references. She even shared a screenshot of a text I sent her over a year ago, completely out of context, as if to prove her point. In it, I had written, "Sometimes I think you'd rather be with someone who doesn't notice you disappearing." She captioned it, gaslighting masked as concern. This was my life. The comments were flooding in. Sympathy, praise for her bravery, support from coworkers. Even her sister wrote, "You deserve peace, Lo. So proud of you for speaking your truth." It would have been easy to explode, to defend myself, to write a point-by-point breakdown of everything she did, post the video, share the screenshots, blast it all into the public eye. But something in me refused. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the last shred of dignity I had left. I didn't want to win that way. I didn't want to become the man she was trying to paint me as just to prove I wasn't. Instead, I reached out to only one person. Her father. We'd barely spoken in years. He had always been distant, polite, formal, The kind of man who believed personal struggles should remain behind closed doors. But he once told me something that stayed with me. When people lie to protect themselves, they always leave fingerprints. So I called him, told him everything, not with bitterness, but with detail. Calm, clear detail. The messages, the calendar entries, the hallway video. I didn't embellish, didn't try to get him on my side. I just laid it all out. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. And then he said, "Send me the files." I did. The next morning, Lorna deleted her post. No explanation. No follow-up. Just gone. But the damage, of course, was already spreading like ink in water. People were whispering. Messages trickled in, not from the loud supporters, but from those in the middle. Old friends. Extended family. People who didn't know who to believe, but suddenly weren't so sure anymore. Later that week, a letter arrived at my rental. Handwritten. Neat cursive I hadn't seen since our wedding invitations. It was from her mother. Inside was just one line. "I'm sorry for what you endured." I had no idea. No signature. No return address. But it was enough to make me sit down and cry harder than I had through the whole ordeal. Not because I wanted her family's approval, but because for once, someone saw me. Not the quiet husband. Not the overthinker. Not the pushover. Just someone hurt. But what I didn't know was that Lorna wasn't finished. And the final blow she tried to land would come from a direction I never saw coming. A place I once felt safest. She filed for a restraining order. That was her final move. Or at least, she thought it would be. A neatly typed petition delivered to my door through a county sheriff, accusing me of harassment, emotional volatility, and, absurdly, stalking. She referenced digital surveillance, a phrase clearly fed to her by some attorney who hadn't bothered to ask about the footage being from our own home camera. She painted me as obsessive, vengeful, and dangerous. It should have broken me, but it didn't. Because this time, I wasn't alone. By then, Danielle, Brock's now very ex-girlfriend, had become more than just someone I messaged in a moment of desperation. We started talking weeks earlier, cautiously, like two survivors poking around the edges of a collapsed building, trying to see if anything was still standing. What began with awkward updates and mutual venting turned into hours-long conversations that stretched into the night. We didn't talk about moving on or healing or revenge. We talked about stupid things. Books we liked. Childhood fears. The odd loneliness of grocery shopping alone. So when I told her about the restraining order, she didn't respond with panic. She said, "Let me help." She found a lawyer friend who reviewed everything. The emails. The video. The message logs. The character statements I had quietly gathered from people who knew both me and Lorna before things collapsed. We prepared a full response. No dramatics, no bitterness, just facts. Documented. Lined up like dominoes. At the court hearing, Lorna showed up in a blazer 2 sizes too large, flanked by a lawyer who clearly expected me to come in unshaven and unstable. Instead, I wore a tailored suit, brought in my calmest tone, and handed the judge a printed folder labeled Timeline of Events, Verified Evidence. She didn't speak much during the session. Her eyes were darting. Her hands fidgeted. I watched the mask fall in real time. It didn't crack, it peeled. The judge dismissed her petition. Formally, publicly, and before leaving the courtroom, her own lawyer, someone clearly hired through a last-minute referral, looked at me and said, "You've been very composed, Mr. Hawthorne." I thanked him, because for once, I wasn't pretending. Lorna tried to avoid me on her way out, but she paused briefly at the door and muttered something just loud enough for me to hear. "I never thought you'd actually grow a spine." I smiled, genuinely, and replied, "I never thought I needed one to leave, but I guess I did." Then I walked away from her for the last time. That same week, I officially resigned from my job. Not because of shame, but because I realized I had spent 10 years working in silence while shrinking to make space for someone who never saw me. I moved out of the cabin. Danielle met me for lunch a week later. Just lunch, no pressure. She brought me a handmade bracelet from her shop, made from burnt cherry wood and old guitar string. I wore it without irony. She told me it reminded her of resilience. We still talk. Almost daily now. Slowly. Carefully. Like people who know how dangerous hope can be, but are still willing to reach for it anyway. I'm not healed. Not fully. I still flinch at certain songs, and I can't bring myself to walk past that bar downtown. But I no longer live in a house where I'm invisible. I don't wait for apologies that never come. I don't twist myself into knots trying to earn the bare minimum. I don't beg to be chosen. I wake up, I breathe, and for the first time in years, I look forward. And that, more than anything, is something she can never take back.